brave.
The brave.
Brave.
Welcome to the New World. Welcome to North America. Join us on a journey through the U.S. and Canada to explore the cultural diversity here. Learn about the freedoms so many have come to know, but also about the restrictions. Experience the real America, not the cliches and prejudices. Today's program takes us to a southern state full of brave people. We will spend time with journalists, a soldier, a pastor, an architect, and a museum director in the place where they live and work, in Georgia. Many enterprising and brave international journalists, like those at CNN, leave their homes and move to Atlanta.
From CNN International, this is World News.
One thing I'll say about Atlanta is that's an interesting thing to happen, especially here. This is a place that is enormously welcoming. The people are warm and friendly. The weather is good. The taxes are low. The housing is affordable. What's intriguing about it is that it is a city that in a very particular way is going through, I think, something of what is going on in Eastern Europe and in other countries that have abandoned a system of moral ambiguity. Atlanta is a city that is rebuilding itself and that hasn't quite placed itself with its history. This is a part of the world that is probably most famous for slavery and for segregation, and that really only moved out of that a very recent time ago. Atlanta really hasn't decided how it feels about all of that. It doesn't have a clear conscience, and so this is a city that doesn't want to contemplate questions about the past. It wants to plan for the future. There's enormous amounts of construction. There's enormous amounts of growth. There's enormous amounts of change. There's enormous amounts of immigration. And we're examples of that. We work in a high-tech company on a high-tech product that's global. And we don't really think about what was here before us, and we don't really think much about the people who are around us, who are from here. Atlanta is a place where people are looking out more than they're looking in, and they're looking forward more than they're looking past.
I was working for a show on CNN called World Report. I was doing stories about Bulgaria in English for this show, and CNN got to know my work through that. I came for a professional program at CNN, and CNN put me on the air as an experiment to anchor the show. I went back to Bulgaria. Bulgarian TV made me an anchor, and a year later I got a phone call from CNN, and they said, we're building this new international network, CNN International. Are you interested in trying out for an anchoring position? I said, of course. And so I arrived here 6.5 years ago, and that's how I started working here.
Similar story for me. I'm from Canada, and like many Canadians, I was drawn to the United States by opportunity. This is the most powerful, successful culture on earth. This country does the most powerful, successful, I think, journalism on earth. And I had an opportunity to join CNN as a reporter based in Paris and then as an anchor here in Atlanta, and leaped at it like a lot of people would, simply because of what American television journalism and what CNN does, which is unlike most other kinds of journalism that people can do in other countries. I think she's an enormously brave person, an enormously clever one. I'll be very honest. It's easy for me coming from Canada, which is a sister culture to that of the United States, but this is a woman who came from a country which is as different from this one as anyone can be. She doesn't work in her native language.
It was just such a pull for me, an attractive, magnetic pull that I didn't even think much when they offered the job. I just jumped at the opportunity, and as you said, it's an enormous opportunity. Then I had a little bit of time to think about it, but that was months later after everything had settled down, and I said, oh my God, that was quite a big change. And after I came here, I had a lot. I just found out how much I needed to adapt.
It's not just her, in fact. There are others who do it. Germans, people of other nationalities who come here, who work in a second language. They're working in a country that's not their own, in a language that's not their own, reporting on countries far from where they have lived. It's not so much bravery, I think it's audacity that we try to tell people in Brazil what's going on in Bangladesh. We try and tell people in Australia what's going on in Austria, and we do it from Atlanta. I sure can. Boy, talk about being in the right place at the right time. I'm very well. How are you? So here's the plan. My first question to you is just basically going to be any more atmosphere you can tell us about what it's like for that country on this day. Any question being raised there about whether he's really dead or about how he died. The timing seems very peculiar. How close was he really to arrest? Who's breathing easier now that he's dead? Is there any way to know, I'm sorry I'm going over this, how he died? And one last question, if there's time for all of this, are there any true believers left in Cambodia or now just victims? So are we ever going to know, are we likely to know whether any of those people or institutions or countries helped him on his way, whether in fact he was done in by someone's hand rather than by illness and old age? Atlanta really hasn't decided how it feels about all of that. It doesn't have a clear conscience.
Someone who has a clear conscience has a feeling that he's done everything right.
I had an opportunity to join CNN as a reporter based in Paris and then as an anchor here in Atlanta and leaped at it.
You may also know the word leapt instead of leaped. There are two different forms for this verb.
It's not so much bravery, I think it's audacity.
Audacity is another word like bravery, but willing to take risk.
So are we ever going to know, are we likely to know whether any of those people or institutions or countries helped him on his way, whether in fact he was done in by someone's hand rather than by illness and old age?
A less direct way to say kill. The courageous and brave deeds of the American forces are widely known throughout the world, but the military police have a unique position in the U.S. Army. Spend a day with a major and discover what her job is like and what she does during a typical day.
Welcome to you. I welcome you to the United States of America, land of the free and the home of the brave, and to Atlanta, Georgia, home of the Atlanta Braves.
So could you tell us something about yourself and what you do?
Yes, I'm a military police officer in the United States Army. I'm assigned at Forces Command in Atlanta, Georgia.
And tell us about your duties here and what you actually do here in Atlanta.
As a military police officer in Atlanta, I work in the headquarters as a staff officer. So right now my capacity is mostly in staffing and administrative work to support the MP units within the United States. I've also had several duty assignments in Germany, in Mannheim, Germany, and in Worms at Thomas and Jefferson Village. There I was on the battalion staff in charge of logistical support and training, and I had the opportunity to work with a lot of the Fieldjägers in Mannheim and in Heidelberg, so that was very enjoyable. I then went back to school. The Army sent me to school for what they call advanced schooling for corrections, so I've spent a lot of time in Army correction facilities. I was in charge of the facility in Mannheim at Coleman Barracks, the military prison there. As a woman in the military police, that's considered what we call combat support. So I think that we're very privileged that we get to serve in that capacity in the Army. I know that in some armies in some countries, women are only allowed to do what they call service support, administrative duties and medical duties and that type of thing. These are also honorable professions in the United States Army, but we're also allowed to do things like military police, field artillery, working with different weapon systems, ordnance officers, and a variety of other things. So I really enjoy law enforcement and corrections and police work.
Sergeant Bender? No, did you call me? Okay, out.
Can you tell me where I can get any information on emission testing? I understand that's a new requirement here in Georgia.
Well, yes, ma'am. Do you have driver's license for Georgia, or your plate, is it from Georgia or a different state?
No, they're both, my license and my plates are from Kansas.
Okay, then you don't need the emissions testing here, ma'am. You're just going to follow under whatever, you said Kansas?
Yes.
Whatever the Kansas emission standards are, or whatever it takes for you to get a Kansas plate. That's all you need. Now, once you have your proof of registration, your valid license plate, valid driver's license, and proof of insurance, just take it down to the vehicle registration office, which is straight down the road, outside the main gate,
Right.
and you'll see a building on the left. Enter into the building there, you'll have to fill out a couple of forms, present those different documents to them, and they'll give you a Fort McPherson decal.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you very much for
Have
the
a good day, ma'am.
information. You too. Yeah? Okay. Hello.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Do you have your library card?
Yes, I sure do.
How's your day going?
It's doing great. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Mine too.
I've got 3 books today. Midnight
Okay.
is a Lonely Place,
All right.
Like Water for Chocolate, and Brave New World.
Oh,
Have you
yeah.
read this one?
No. Well, I guess I probably did a long time ago. A Brave New World. Sounds interesting.
There was another book that I was really interested in also. I was wondering if you had a book called The Lawyers.
Oh, yeah, but we have a waiting list for that. So you have to fill out this little form. And there's a form right down there in the plastic holder
Okay.
if you want to fill that out. Or there's one right down there in that plastic holder.
Okay. All right. And I just fill out this information and wait for the book to be returned?
Yes, and I'll call you whenever it comes in for you.
Okay.
Now, these books are due back on the 1st of May.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Your total comes to $130.91.
1:30. Okay.
Yes, I see that.
Okay, I have 140.
140?
Oh, hi, Maurice.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
How is your program going today?
Oh, it's working really well. I think that I have a PT test coming up this week.
All right.
And I think the program you designed for my abs and my upper body is going to work out really well. I think I'm going to score really high.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
You been working hard?
I sure have.
Good.
Trying
Good.
my best. Yeah.
Great.
You look in shape. You
Well,
look
thank
ready.
you.
You look
Thank
ready
you.
for this PT test.
I've been sticking with it. I'm working out about 4 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week.
All right.
Do you have driver's license for Georgia, or your plate, is it from Georgia or a different state?
No, they're both, my license and my plates are from Kansas.
We say license plate instead of number plate for metal tags on cars.
There was another book that I was really interested in also. I was wondering if you had a book called The Lawyers.
This is another way to ask a question.
Oh, it's working really well. I think that I have a PT test coming up this week.
All right.
An abbreviation, PT test for physical training. The work of Martin Luther King Jr. is well known far beyond his original home in downtown Atlanta. Visit his home church and memorial to hear what many people think about this brave man.
I'm Joseph L. Roberts, Jr., pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church. I've been here since 1975, so this is my 23rd year. I am the person who supervises most of the activities that go on in this very historical church. Of course, a number of people know that this was the church that Martin Luther King pastored with his father from 1960 to 1968, and it has had a history that goes back some 113 years, just after the period of Reconstruction in the United States of America. I think this church has been noted because of the bravery of Dr. King, and that kind of brave action is to be seen in the fact that he started in Montgomery, Alabama, to try to break down the walls of segregation and transportation, and he was successful in doing that without any guns, without any violence. And the method of social change which he advocated was one that called upon us to appeal to the conscience of people, realizing that there is in everybody the desire to do good. And once you appeal to conscience and decency, he thought this nation would change. And so he brought about a revolution in this country because there were a number of laws that impeded the freedom of all people, and especially black people. But because he laid it out before the nation and let people see children being bitten by dogs and having fire hose turned on them in Birmingham, Alabama, and other places, the nation was abhorred by what was actually going on and thought it needed to change and needed to make sure that things would change in this particular nation. He always believed that poor people ought to have adequate housing. And we now have the Martin Luther King Village, which has 196 apartments in it. And better than 75% of the people who live in these apartments are below the poverty level. They have a supplement known as Section 8 given to them to allow them to stay in those apartments, paying only about 25% of their income for the rent that they pay for those apartments. He was one who thoroughly believed in educational opportunities and was well educated himself, but thought the education should always spill over into some action that helped people. He was a peace advocate, but I think Dr. King has always been concerned about the fact that we must make sure that religious expression is allowed, even if one does not agree with it. Because if you stand against that, then you are not ever going to be able to have a land of freedom and a land of justice. And so this church has always stood for religious freedom, for the integrity of the individual and the sacredness of human personality, and for the right for people to stand for what they believe in without guns and realize that in the final analysis, it is conscience that shall win and not military arms.
Well, how you doing? I'm from New York, you know? My name is David. My name is David. I feel like the Martin Luther King Center, it has a very modern purpose, you know? It's like not many things are done for the African-American community, so as far as this going on, it's like giving back to the community, and it's highly appreciated. I mean, anything that is done wholeheartedly, you can awesomely respect, period. Thank you very much.
And I thought it was very emotionally moving. Some of the stuff that I learned in the center today was stuff that I hadn't been taught in school. So it was just a nice learning experience. I think it's something that I think each black person needs to see. You know, you hear about it, you see the speech, but you know, it's a different thing when you come here and you actually see it for yourself and you see his home and everything. So it's a nice experience.
My name is Lachey Brown, and I like the center because it was like the same thing she said. It was like he did all that already, and it's like I felt the same thing, you know what I'm saying? And the church, oh man, I wanted to cry because it was like he preached there, and it was like, wow, you know what I'm saying? He preached there, and I was like, man, if I could have heard, if I could have been there, if I could have been born sooner and heard him preach, I would have loved it. Oh my goodness. Whew, it was beautiful. And as far as the center, the whole thing, it make you feel a lot, you know what I'm saying? Just like everybody else said, they was like, that you can feel it in their hearts. That's exactly what it was, and it was beautiful.
You get a better look at things, because when you go in there, you see his suits, his shoes, and actually I learned that he was a very, very short man, and I didn't know that before. So I think this is like a living experiment. That's how I felt about the situation.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful experience to come and see this. It's really touching at times. And just to be here where his body is laid and then to see all his things, it's really wonderful. It's a great experience.
I found it very moving. I was not very familiar with Martin Luther King as a person, and it brought me a little closer to that. Other than that, I was actually just very pleased with the fact that it was really understated. It wasn't very garish. It was so closely knit to where he was originally born and where he was a pastor. I thought that the intermingling of all the three were just great. So it really brought it home to me.
And it has had a history that goes back some 113 years.
In this case, some means about.
Just after the period of Reconstruction in the United States of America.
The period of Reconstruction was the time in history after the Civil War when the southern states were reorganized.
And the method of social change which he advocated was one that called upon us to appeal to the conscience of people. And better than 75% of the people who live in these apartments are below the poverty level.
Better than means more than.
But thought the education should always spill over into some action that helps
Like
people.
water that moves from one place to another.
I mean, anything that is done wholeheartedly, you can awesomely respect, period.
In America, we use the word period, where in British English people use full stop, both for punctuation and, in this case, to show the end of something abstractly.
The intermingling of all the three were just great. So it really brought it home to me.
When something is brought home, you understand it completely. Airports are full of people who perform brave deeds every day. Gain some insight into the work behind the scenes from the architect who organizes the construction projects at Hartsfield International Airport.
Hello, my name is Annette Wynn Miles. I'm the Aviation Design and Construction Manager here at Hartsfield International Airport. My responsibilities include managing the construction projects that occur here at Hartsfield. Within the next 3 weeks, this will become the home of the police precinct here at Hartsfield International Airport. They're currently located in an area downstairs, out of the view of the public. The city decided that in order to give the passengers a comfort level that they are in a secure area, they decided to bring the police group upstairs. Our role in this was to take an existing space, which is where we're standing now. It used to be the old offices for our administration staff, and retrofit it to a police precinct. In doing that, we had to work with the police department to determine what their needs were, and to then do space relationship studies and designs to determine how to use this space in a very effective way for the police department. Much of what we do is done behind the scenes. Our success is when you don't recognize that we have performed a certain project. One of our projects that we're very proud of is our signage program. We have wayfinding signage, we have international signage, and we have tenant identification signage. One of the international signs is here behind me, and that helps to lead the international passengers through the concourses into the terminal building and into baggage claim, and then to exit the facility. The wayfinding system brings the domestic travelers through the airport and leads them to the baggage claim area as well. This will become the home of the police precinct here at Hartsville International Airport.
In America, the word precinct is used for something administrative. In Britain, this word is used for any closed area.
And retrofit it to a police precinct.
Retrofit is a technical term for furnishing.
Welcome to Georgia's Stone Mountain Park. You are looking at the largest exposed solid granite rock in the world. Stone Mountain was formed over 300 million years ago by volcanic pressures deep within the earth. These forces pushed molten rock upward toward the Earth's surface. The superheated rock spread out as it cooled, but did not penetrate the ground. Gradually, erosion carried away the soil that covered the rock, exposing the mountain. This process happened at the rate of about 1 inch every 1,000 years. It took over 120 million years for the mountain to appear as you see it today. The carving on the mountain is a memorial to the southern states which fought in America's Civil War between 1861 and 1865. The three figures are, from left to right, Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States of America, General Robert E. Lee, one of the South's most beloved leaders, and General Stonewall Jackson.
The early settlers in Georgia were brave Europeans who came to a new home, experienced the importance of the history of Georgia through a tour of a famous museum.
I am Robert Weinberger, and I am the museum director here at Stone Mountain Park, and I operate the plantation area here, which consists of about 20 buildings that were moved in here to form a recreation of an old plantation area, and also a museum that deals with how the carving in the mountain was done here. The museum also deals with the history of the mountain, with the early settlers that came here back in the 1820s, and brings the future or the history forward till now. It's hard to think now in Georgia that people have been living here now for over 200 years, but that at one time this was all wilderness, and the people moved here and essentially wrested the land away from the Indians, and they had to be very brave to do that. I mean, this was wilderness. It's people now, when you look at the antebellum South and what this portrays, you think of a very wealthy lifestyle and people living in these big mansions with fancy outfits. The people moved here and essentially wrested the land away from the Indians.
To take something from someone else with force.
When you look at the antebellum South and what this portrays, you think of a very wealthy lifestyle.
Antebellum is the period in America before the Civil War.
But they were pioneers in the original days, and it was a very difficult life for them. So we try and show both aspects of here, not just the South that people think of from Gone with the Wind, but also the bare bones, rugged lifestyle of the very early settlers here as well.